Your camera desperately wants to help you save time. Let's talk about setting up your favorites. Hello, I am Tim Little. I am a nighttime landscape artist living on the east coast of Massachusetts on Cape Cod. I'm going to do three things in this video. First, I'm going to tell you about favorites / user settings / custom settings and why you might want to use them to make your life a little bit easier. And I bet you're not using them right now. Two, I'm going to talk about a light that I use that I absolutely love. I use it for almost all of my photography, but I never use it to make any of my images. So this will make sense when I tell you about it. And three, if you're still around at the end, because I'm filming this in December and it's the Christmas season, I'm going to show you my Christmas tree, which may not sound all that exciting, but if you are a sci-fi fan, you're going to love my Christmas tree. So be sure to stick around for that. I shoot with a ton of people, and almost all of them don't realize that their camera has the ability to save presets. And by presets, I mean groups of settings that you frequently would use for a particular type of shoot. So if you're somebody who is a portrait photographer or a night photographer like me, or you like to do macro, each one of those things has sort of a group of settings that you could save into this one click on the dial on your camera and just pull them right up. And it's super useful and a big time saver. We're going to talk about some of the benefits in a minute, but this video conceptually can apply to anybody who owns a camera that has these abilities. We're going to talk specifically about the Pentax system and of course the K1, since that's what I have. But I've also owned Canon cameras in the past, and I know on those, if you look at the top dial, some of them have C1, C2. Nikon, I don't know. There might be something in there that they have. I have a feeling it's there. Nikon users, let me know in the comments. And then, of course, with Pentax, like the K1, this is heavy. I have two of these so I can work out. You've got U1 through U5. And that's the most custom settings I've ever seen available on any camera body. On some of the smaller body Pentaxes, it might be U1, 2, and 3. But regardless, having that functionality is not only a time saver, but it's just smart in terms of your workflow. I like to go out and photograph things and get going right away. I don't really like to sit and mess around with my settings too much. Now, you may be somebody who says, I don't shoot the same stuff all the time. I'm always shooting different things. But I bet if you look at your settings, you'll find from shoot to shoot, things might be fairly close. So even if you're not always going to be using the exact same settings, it is nice to just have a base level that you can work off of. So for example, I love to do long exposure moonlight photography. So for me, the settings are going to look like f8, ISO 400. I'm going to have it in a bulb mode. And then I'm going to have a bunch of these sub settings in there, like my white balance, my color profile, whether or not Astro Tracer is going to be on, whether or not I want image stabilization. I mean, anything that you have available to you in the menu system on the Pentax, you can save in that bundle of settings under one of those user numbers. So I may dial over to the long exposure moonlight stuff, and maybe I got to tweak the time just depending on what I'm doing, or maybe tweak the ISO a little bit here and there, but all my base stuff is right there and ready to go. That is a big win. I just think for anybody who likes to shoot a lot of the same conditions, and even for those of you who don't, there's a good chance that you can narrow all of your shooting down to a couple different conditions. Another way where it comes in handy is, let's say you've changed a bunch of things on your camera for some reason with the settings. You did some wacky shoot that you would never normally do. With your user settings, you don't have to go back and reset all your stuff. You can just click back to one of your more used settings and all your old settings will reload. So that's a huge time saver there as well. They're really easy to set up. Again, we're going to do it with the K1, and you're going to be able to do this probably in less than a minute. I will make this video a little bit longer than that just so I can talk you through it. But if you have a K1 or another Pentax body, this should apply to you pretty easily. And that's what's nice about the menu system on the K1 too, is even if you're not quite sure where to find it on your camera, you can usually dial through enough to find it. There's not a lot of sub-menus on the Pentax system, and that's what I love about it, being able to just pick it up and find those things. So let's look at the K1 screen, and I'll tell you where to find this user setting. Looking at the back of the K1 screen, this is pretty much where you'd be at once you got to a point where you were pretty comfortable that the settings you wanted to save are ready to go. So I'm in a manual focus. I'm shooting with a flat color profile. I have image stabilization off, 15 seconds, f5.6, 1600, and I'm shooting in RAW. I've also got a white balance of 3800. This is what I consider to be my test shot settings. And I don't mean test shot like I'm testing for this video. I mean that as a long exposure night photographer, I can tell you that nothing's worse than having a long exposure go by, having it pop up and finding out that something screwy happened, like a lens flare from a street light or slightly out of focus or anything like that. And you just blew all that time and you got to make a change. Well, with this test setting that I've implemented for myself, this allows me to take a test shot, and then I can quickly evaluate after just 15 seconds if any of those issues are going to pop up. If you are a long exposure photographer or a night photographer that shoots longer exposures like that, I'm talking minutes, not like 30 seconds, that is hugely valuable. So I'm going to drop that into U1. And that's going to be where it's going to live until I decide to either change it in the future or delete it. But I can tell you that I'm probably never going to remove that. So let's look at the screen again. And once you have all your settings dialed in the way you like, you can go into menu. Here's the good news. It's a really easy trip to get you over to the save setting option. Looking at the main screen, you're in your little camera mode. You're on page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you see right at the bottom, it's the last option on the last page. Save user mode. So we're going to just scream right on down there, and I'm going to hit OK. So here are your options. Save settings, rename, check saved settings, or reset user mode. So these are pretty much descriptive, I guess. You want to save the setting? Great, save it. If you want to rename something that you already have because you don't like the name, you can do that. If you're not sure what's in that setting and you want to go through that and evaluate it completely, you can check the save setting. I mean, you could always dial to it as well. That's going to show you what's there, but this will give you a little bit more of a deeper analysis. And then lastly, you can just reset it. You can blank it out. You can wipe it clean if that's what you want to do. In this case, we're going to save our settings. I'm going to hit Save Settings. And now you're going to get the list of your user options, U1 through U5. And they're going to be named whatever you already have them named if you do it all. Otherwise, they won't be named. I think by default, they're probably just user 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But that said, you're going to see on my list here that I already have test under user 1. And that's because that's where it normally lives on my camera, but just pretend for a minute there's nothing there. Now I'm going to select that because that's where I want to save it. And you're going to get a pop-up that says Save Current Settings in User Custom Mode. That is a nice way of saying we're going to do this thing. And it's another way of saying that if you save it in there and there's already something, it's going to completely override it. So if you got something there and you hit the save button, you're not going to get any further warnings. It's just going to do it. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and we're going to do it. And that's it. Now it is in there. You don't get a confirmation that it's in there other than going to the actual dial or going back in the menu. So you hit menu and you can go down to checked save settings. So let's click on that just for the heck of it. And there's everything we just saved. All right. So that's easy enough, but let's say you want to name it, because let's face it, trying to remember U1 through 5 and what each one does, might not be something you want to worry about. I don't want to worry about it. And you've already seen on mine that I have mine named, which is great. So we'll go back to that main menu, and you see you have rename user mode. So I'll go ahead and pick test. I'm not going to rename it because it's already named what I want, but you can scroll right through and select what you need as you go. So let's say I want to just add, I don't know, I'll add a number to this. I'll say 1, and you hit OK, and that gets your number in there. If you need to go back, which of course you can hit the trash key, and it tells you down here, trash, delete 1 character, and that'll allow you to go back as needed. But we're not going to do any of that. I'm actually just fine with the way that it is. In fact, I'm not even going to save this because I'm just going to keep it named test. But you've got a lot of options here on how long you can name this. I've got user 2 right now for me is just a blank one. That's kind of like a hot standby. So if I'm going to go out and do a job and I think I might need some settings preloaded for it, that's where I'll drop it. Then you'll see I've got my Milky Way, Long Expo, and then Tracked. So Tracked is where I have it just automatically switch on my Astro Tracer. I hope you found that helpful if you're a Pentax user. And if you're somebody who owns another camera system and you have the user settings available to you like that, I hope just conceptually, I've kind of sold you on the idea of why they might be useful to you. I always used them on my Canons, and I've, of course, always used them on my Pentax, both of them. And between the two bodies, I actually have them set up exactly the same. So whatever camera I grab, I'm good to go. But it's useful, and I think if you set them up and you get used to using them, it's a lot of like use words in there, you will find that you don't know how you kind of lived without it. Every so often, I'm going to throw a little segment in about a piece of hardware that I use that helps my photography but doesn't directly connect to the images. So it's a peripheral item, and that can be a multitude of things. We all have things that we bring with us that really help out our in-field workflow. And in a lot of cases for me, that is a light of some sort. And in this case, it's the Coast HX4. This light is amazing because it's got this killer feature where the head of the light, the top of it, rotates, which means that if you use this clip here, this is also magnetic, which gives it a little bonus feature. If you have something metal around, you got to stick it to pretty strong magnet. You can clip this, let's say on your backpack strap as you're hiking, and you can twist this to make it aim in the right direction. Awesome. You can then take it off, put it on your hat, and then re-aim it the way that you need it. I use this a lot for looking at the back of my camera, for looking on the ground. I'm scouting a place out. It's great for hiking. It's got a nice wide sort of flood beam on it. And if you're a night photographer, this function, double click, gets you red. And you know how important it is to maintain your night vision, and red is going to help you do that. IPX4 weather rating, so I have no qualms about taking this out in the rain or in the winter or on misty, salty spray evenings over at the beach. Like, not worried about it at all. I've dropped it a ton of times and it's completely held up. It takes 2 AAAs. Now, the AAAs on this will last probably 3.5 hours on continuous, but it doesn't die immediately. What happens is it just gets progressively more dim. So then you know it's time for batteries. But as a night photographer, I don't even really notice that. I only notice it when I put brand new batteries in, and then I realize how bright it was supposed to be. But I would highly, highly recommend $14.99 on average. If you look on hardware store sites, they're upwards of maybe $20. Amazon, $14.99 typically. eBay, sometimes you can find them as low as $9.99. Really, at any of those price points, I think this light is worth it. I've shown this to several people, and almost every one of them has ended up picking this up. HX4. Beware, there is another version of this light that they make that also does UV. I think it's UV in white, or it's UV in red. I can't remember. But either way, if you're looking for the white and red, just make sure that when you purchase it, you read the description and know that it is that combination. Okay, last but not least, I promised you a look at the Christmas tree. And this may not be a big deal to some people. Maybe you don't even like Christmas, but if you like sci-fi, like I hinted at the beginning of this video, you're probably going to like this tree. So let me just preface it with a super quick story. I have been collecting Hallmark ornaments since the mid-90s, the Hallmark Star Trek ornaments. And over the years, I have amassed a rather large collection to the point where I think I'm going to have to either get a second tree or a bigger tree because things are already pretty well packed in. Let's have a look at the tree.
frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before. Enterprise. Transporter room energized. Standard procedure, Captain. Sulu. You program phaser barrage on Vulcan cities.
Yes, Mr. Spock.
Captain, you feel any abnormal effects?
Yes. Dr. McCoy, you better look us over. That was a rough beam-up.
Shuttlecraft to Enterprise. Shuttlecraft to Enterprise. Spock here. Happy holidays. Live long and prosper.
What are you? I am the guardian of forever. Are you machine or being? I am both, and neither. I am my own beginning, my own ending. I wish you a most honorable holiday. Kapla.
This is Captain Janeway of the Federation vessel Delta Flyer. We're on a mission of peaceful exploration.
And that's my tree. I hope you enjoyed it. There's a lot of ornaments that I don't have. A couple of years back, Hallmark started switching over to battery-powered ornaments, which is unfortunate because if you want all the ships to light up at the same time, you got to push all the buttons real quick and hope you do it fast enough to enjoy all of that for like 10 seconds. And I don't really like that too much, so I haven't picked up too many of those. But all the ones that they came out with that you can plug into the actual Christmas tree or a string of lights, I have almost all of those. There's a couple out there that I'm missing. I'm still working on getting, but you know, we'll get there at some point. But again, I'll probably have to get a larger tree. So anyway, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever you celebrate, or if you don't, just have a great weekend. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.